In this video, I'm going to show you how to add labels to a GIF. In a previous video, I made this GIF showing urbanization of the Fort Worth, Dallas area between 1984 and 2025. And this GIF does a really good job of showing that change over time, but it is slightly difficult to interpret because we don't have those time markers on every single image. So it would make this GIF a lot more professional to have that date on every single image. In order to add labels to images or GIFs in Google Earth Engine, we use a really helpful package that was created by a user. And in order to import this package, we're going to create a variable. I'm going to call this text, and then we are going to require, and then we are going to call this package repository that this user created. So users Gina packages, and then the package is called text. We will now be able to call the functions that are within this package called text just by using this text variable. Another thing that we need in order to create labels within our GIF is we need to tell Google Earth Engine where we want that label to be situated on our ROI. In order to do that, I'm going to create a new geometry. This is important. Create a new one. Switch your geometry item to a point, and then drop that point on your map where you would like the text to appear. So I'm going to drop it right there. I'm going to call this our anchor. The next thing to make sure of when adding labels to a GIF is that you actually have the label embedded as a property within each image. In this code, I did set a property called year, and I made sure that every single image had that property. We can look in our image collection and see the properties. So the first image has a year property of 1984, and our last image has a property of 2025. If you have made your GIF a different way, for example, if you have made your GIF image by image, you would want to add that property to each individual image by saying set year and then just specifying the year. So here you might say 1985. Within our code, we already have that property, so we are all set to go. We'll now create a variable where we will perform a function that basically takes every single image within our image collection and adds that label to it. So I'm going to call this variable images with labels, and I'm going to get my yearly image collection variable, which is again our image collection that includes all of our images, and I'm going to perform a map function over it. This will basically iterate through our image collection, and for every single element or image within it, it'll perform this function that I will write now. So each element within our function is called I. We are first going to specify what the label is that we will add to the image. In this case, we're going to take that image, which we've called I within this function, and we're going to get the year property. We're then going to draw that label onto our image. So label image. I'm going to call this text package that we uploaded here, and then I'm going to use a function within it called draw. I'm going to get our label, our anchor. Another element here that we need is the scale. I'm going to put 1000 here, and I'll explain in a second what this scale means and how we can adjust it. And then we're also going to include some text properties here. So within some curly brackets, we can put some items like text color, and I'll just put that as white. There are a lot of other text properties that you can include inside of these curly brackets. There's a lot of information online about this text package and what kinds of specifications you can put here. Awesome. We are then going to return our image, and we are going to visualize it. We'll add some of our visualization parameters here. For example, the bands, which would be red, green, blue. let's add the min and max. So we had put before 7,000 and 16,000. We will then blend that label for our image onto our image. And then if we wanted, we could also keep that year property. So in order to do that, we could set year as the label. Let's print our images with labels and see what happens. And I'm getting a small error here because I'm missing an S for users. All right, great. So when I printed this images with labels item, I got an image collection that again has 42 elements. And each of these images has now 3 bands, which represent our red, green, and blue channels. Because we've already set these visualization parameters here, these images are now totally ready to be visualized. I will again now set our GIF params, and we need some new GIF params now that we have already added some of the visualization parameters up here. I'll set my region as the ROI, the scale again as 300, and then the frames per second as 4. And then let's print this GIF using the UI thumbnail function. This time I'm going to use this images with labels image collection, and then I'll use my new GIF params. I'm going to turn off our old GIF visualization and just leave the new one. Awesome. So here we have our GIF with some numbers visualized. There's a couple of things I want you to notice. The first is that it's added a decimal point after our year. So that's something that we may want to fix. I also mentioned that I would explain this scale argument here. We can fiddle with this a little bit and change it to see how it affects the size of these numbers on the map. But basically what this scale argument does is it controls how big this label will be. If you wanted, you could set scale as a variable and use map get scale. And this will take into account how zoomed in you are to your ROI. So let's run this and see what it looks like at this scale of the map. So you can see that the numbers are a little bit smaller now. If we zoomed out on our map a little bit, and we reran this, the numbers will now show up in a different size because again, this map get scale function takes into account how zoomed in you are in your map, and it uses that as the scale to determine how big your label will be. I find it's easier just to hard code the scale so we can print the scale really fast and see what it lists. So it says the scale right now is about 1200. So I'm going to go back and use a scale of just 1,000 because I thought that that was a good size for our GIF. The other thing that we wanted to edit within our label was that we don't want that 0.0 at the end of every year. In order to fix that, I'm going to go into this label argument, and I'm basically just going to format the number. And we can do that with the format function. For numbers, we can format them by specifying a pattern. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to first tell Google Earth Engine that this is a number, and then I'm going to tell it to please format that number using this specific format. You can see the different numeric formats within here. I'm going to take one of these and copy paste it, and I'm going to indicate that I don't want 2 decimal points. I want 0. Now when we run this, hopefully we will not have any decimal points. Awesome, so now our GIF is just showing the year and doesn't have that decimal point. If you wanted, you can continue to adjust the visualization of your label. For example, if you wanted it to show up in red rather than white, you could change that. But there you go, this is one way of adding labels to GIFs.